Here for our October 21st regular City Council meeting. With that, I will call this meeting to order. Would you please stand with us for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for being here. We had a team dynamics meeting before our regular meeting, and that was very productive. And so we will move on into our regular meeting, and we will have roll call at this point in time. Please start voting. Holly?
All councilors present, with Councilor Gillespie previously requesting to be excused, and a quorum has been declared.
Thank you, Holly. Next up, we'll move on to agenda approval. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Holly?
There
Heather?
is not.
If not, Mayor, I'll make the motion we approve the agenda and also excuse Mr. Gillespie.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Next up, we have citizen comment. Alamosa City Council welcomes your comments. Citizens wishing to speak may obtain and complete a speaker card through the city clerk at the start of the meeting. At this point in time, I have 2 cards. We will start with Mr. Eric Burt. Would you please approach the podium? Give us your name and address for the record, please, Mr. Burt.
My name is Eric Burt. My home address is actually in the county, 6394 South County Road 105, but I have a business in Alamosa at 3223 Main Street, which is Christie Mountain Sports. My intention here is to talk, or my reason to be here at this meeting is to talk about the bag fee, the bag tax, the bag fee that is going to be discussed on council's agenda here shortly. I'm not going to 3 minutes is not enough to discuss some of the information that I have to share. I intend to share that when you guys are in the middle of the discussion. But I've already spent time with some of you gentlemen at the work session that I think was in May. You already know some of my feelings on this, but I have some more information to share that I think would be more productive during the Q&A session on the thing. So, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burt.
Mayor,
Eric,
I don't.
go ahead.
There's normally not a Q&A, so I don't know if you want all the public comment during this time period or if you were going to change the format and allow Q&A. But I want to make sure if we're not allowing it, he knows that and can make any comments he wants to make at this point in time.
Right, yeah, we're not going to have a question and answer. Did you want to make other comments, Mr. Burt?
Can we allow him to have comments? Because I did talk to Mr. Burt earlier, and he had a lot of thoughts that he wanted to share in regards to the plastic bag fee, and I thought we might have an opportunity for the citizens to openly talk about it, but I apologize for that.
This is on the agenda as a discussion item under City Manager Legal. Councilor Coleman, do you want to just wait till then, or?
It is definitely council's prerogative. I just wanted to make sure if we were to follow the normal standard procedure for the agenda, there would not be an opportunity at that time for him to provide input. If council wants to allow that, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure he didn't miss that opportunity if you were not going to deviate.
Council, is that something you're open to right now? Councilor Coleman, is that all right?
I'm open to citizens' comment in regards to the issues that we have on the agenda, yes.
I think, Councilor Coleman, you meant in regard to this issue. I would strongly urge council not to begin entertaining citizen comment on every agenda item.
No, this particular issue.
Thank you. Next up, we've got Mr. David Mize. Mr. Mize, please approach the podium. Give us your name and address for the record, please.
I'm David Mize. I live at 1920 Edison, and I was commenting on the plastic bag issue also. Council persons, as you know, I forwarded a packet of information to you all several months ago when the issue was up before. Want to reiterate the fact that this is not a good idea. The plastic bag tax, plastic bag fee, whatever it is, it's going to be a regressive tax in the worst possible way, hurt the poorest people in the community the most. And plastic bags are less than 0.5% of the waste stream anyway. There are issues that are much larger and can be much more impactful in the recycling, in the green movement. And if you really want to look at it, you take the carbon footprint of a plastic bag over a bag that is reusable and shipped here from China. The carbon footprint is much smaller for an American-made plastic bag than it is for a reusable bag made in China. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mize. Does staff wish to follow up? Thank you. Next, we'll move on to consent calendar A. The consent calendar allows multiple actions with one motion. Consent calendar A contains routine items which have been recommended for action by staff or advisory boards. Council may remove a consent calendar item for separate consideration. Tonight we have the approval of the minutes of the October 7th, 2015 meeting, the approval of the special meeting of October 8, 2015. We'll receive the September 2015 monthly reports as well as the 2015 September expenditure reports. Are there any questions or comments on consent calendar A, Council? Councilor Vihil.
Thank you, Mayor. If there's no comments, I move that we approve consent calendar A.
I second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on consent calendar A? Seeing none, start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. We'll move on to regular business brought forward by city staff. Tonight we have two items by Public Works. Resolution number 13, 2015, funding of substantial compliance with Regina Kasich annexation, as well as Resolution 14-2015, a resolution providing for the addition of Richardson Hall to the City of Alamosa Registry of Historic Places. And we'll start with Resolution 13-2015. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Council. We had a request for the annexation of an enclave located between West 10th and West 11th Streets, west of Highway 285 at the southern terminus of Monroe Avenue Extended. For the purposes of this discussion, an enclave is an area of unincorporated territory completely surrounded by city property. These enclaves are created when property is annexed in a patchwork pattern as has been customary in Alamosa. This condition can cause problems for the city and neighboring properties. The city has no control over land use and zoning in the enclaves inside its boundaries. People in and around these enclaves can become confused as to whether city or county government is responsible for delivery of services. Firefighters, police, and paramedics can sometimes have trouble determining whether accidents occur within or without city boundaries. And all taxpayers must help subsidize what can be excessive costs of services in these areas. The subject property is currently served by city water and sewer and is accessed by a paved street on the north and is inaccessible from the south.
Thank you, Pat. Council, do we have any discussion with Pat on these items? Councilor Grego.
I guess I'll start. I don't understand, Pat, what you're saying, that these enclaves are, you're saying they're wrong for the area?
Well, they're not ideal. They can be, it can be difficult to provide services. We don't have authority over zoning issues, things like that within that enclave. It's still county.
In this area here also, is that where that doctor built those apartment houses?
No, this is south of that. This is on the south side of 10th Street. I put an exhibit attached to it. You can see the south end of the apartments to the north. The red square is the property in question.
Mm-hmm. So this is on the other side of 10th Street?
Yes, sir.
Oh, my God.
Are there any other questions of Pat? If there are no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion on Resolution 13, 2015. Okay.
I'm hearing that this is going to be a problem here.
I think the problem is if we don't annex it, the preference that we've understood from council in the past is to try to annex in these enclaves. And by not annexing it in is you have some of the issues that Mr. Steenberg was reviewing in regards to the zoning control, emergency response, those types of things.
Yeah, it is to our benefit to annex the property.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Council, if there's no further discussion, the chair will entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and make that motion that we pass resolution number 13, 2015.
I second.
I've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on Resolution 13, 2015? Seeing none, start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. We'll move on to Resolution 14-2015. Pat?
Thank you, sir. This is an action to place Richardson Hall on the local registry of historic places. Originally built in 1906 with additions in 1930, 39, 40, and 2014, Richardson Hall, named for Ira Richardson, once housed the entirety of what was then Adams State Teachers College. Throughout its history, Richardson Hall has maintained its historical integrity and continues to exhibit the majority of its original architectural features and remains one of the most, if not the most, recognized and iconic structures in the city. Its addition to the local registry will help protect, enhance, and perpetuate the property, which is obviously reminiscent of past eras, events, and persons important in local history, and will facilitate and enhance the availability of incentives for the property owner to maintain its historical nature and appearance.
Thank you, Pat. I believe we have someone here from Adams State University.
We have two members of the HPAC and Tony Becker from Adams State University to accept the plaque should you choose to enter the property into the register.
Thank you, Pat. Councilor Stefano.
I move that we approve Resolution 14-2015, a resolution providing for addition of Richardson Hall to the City of Alamosa Registry of Historic Places.
Councilor Coleman.
I second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on Resolution 14-2015?
Yes, I would like to make a quick comment if I could.
Councilor Vihil.
I just want to thank Pat and staff and the folks from Adams State. This is a cornerstone of our town and the valley, and this just protects that prestige of Richardson Hall. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Griego.
Along that same comment, so we have been working with Adams State on putting this on the registry.
Mm-hmm.
And they're okay with it and stuff.
Yes, the application was signed by President McClure
Okay.
And they have a representative here tonight to accept.
Good. All right, thank you.
I've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, start voting, please. Holly? Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. And so,
I guess at this point, I'd like to introduce Don Thompson and Jordan Gortmaker from HPAC, and they can present the plaque to the university.
thank you. Thank you very much. Let's go down, gentlemen.
Yes, I think they wanted it to be all-inclusive.
Absolutely. Thank you, Don.
All buildings in Alamosa, I think that comes closest to being the one that represents Alamosa.
I'm sure people in the audience realize how much Richardson Hall is emblematic of historic Alamosa. I love the story that when they had trouble funding the school to get it started when the state would not provide funding, that the citizens showed up with cattle, they showed up with hogs, they showed up with carloads of potatoes, etc., to provide the funds necessary to get the school going. And to me, it plays such an important part in making Alamosa Alamosa that building, I know that the rest of the Historic Preservation Committee agrees with me. We couldn't wait to get it on the register, especially after the millions of dollars just spent to bring it up to the jewel that it is. So thank you, Council, for doing that.
Thank you, Don.
And I just want to thank you all on behalf of President McClure, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, and just mention that it's just a wonderful occasion to celebrate this historic building at the time of its beauty restored and its function restored, and it's really an exciting moment for Adams State. So thank you so much for being a part of that.
Thank you.
And I guess I'll just echo everything else that's been said, and thank you for approving the motion.
And thank you, folks, for all the hard work that you do on the Historic Preservation Committee. We really appreciate that. Next up, we have a regular business brought forward by Parks and Recreation. Heinz, thank you for being here.
Good evening, councilors. All right, before you have resolution number 12, 2015, and it's supporting the GOCO grant submission for the Alamosa City Ice Rink and multi-use facility. Since last December, when our request from GOCO was not funded for the new ice rink boards, the Rec Advisory Board created an ice rink committee to lay the groundwork for a covered ice rink and event pavilion. And that group committee was tasked to work on facility location, options, design concepts, the feasibility, revenue generation, operational cost projections, construction costs, and capital funding opportunities. And since then, Council has committed $500,000 from the rec fund to go ahead towards, I guess, like seed money for this project, towards the $1.3 million costs for construction. Since April, we've submitted a grant to DOLA and to the Daniels Fund. We were awarded the DOLA grant for $200,000. We're in the we're halfway through the 120-day window for Daniels for $250,000. And this is the last, I guess, official task to do for the GOCO grant submission that's due on November 5th, is the approval of this resolution.
Thank you, Hines. Councilman Coleman.
I just have a comment for Hines. I want to thank you and the entire team for the work that you're doing on this facility. I think it's going to be a great addition to the entire San Luis Valley once it's put into place. But I also would like to congratulate you so far on the funding that you've received already from DOLA for $200,000. I'm just hopeful that the Daniels funds and the GOCO grant and all the other donors that you have listed and that you're soliciting will see the benefit to this facility in our community, and hopefully they'll follow suit and we'll get those $250,000, $350,000, $40,000 in additional money. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Diego.
Yeah, I had one comment. This is a multi-use facility with a section of it being an ice rink. And also, on the $500,000 that the city did commit, it was contingent that the rest of all these grants be put together. And if that doesn't happen, then we'll have to try to find a different way, I guess.
That's correct. And in fact, I think the DOLA's grant's contingent on us receiving the other grants also. And I have a feeling probably Daniels will be also.
Yeah.
So it's a domino effect. If one goes, they all go, or depending which direction. So yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think a big thank you needs to go out to DOLA, especially Christy Culp. We've got the first cornerstone in that, and hopefully GOCO will come through. And once that happens, then it's just a matter of all the other dominoes trying to fall into place so that this worthwhile project will become a reality in our community. Thank you, Hines, and all the hard work that you folks do out there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mayor, I'm glad you brought up Christy Culp. She actually took time to meet with Hines and I and tour both the existing site and the new site to make sure that when she was meeting with her peers, she could adequately explain the project and the need. And so I'm glad you brought that up and that you've already initiated a thank you card to her as well, because I think she played a very big role.
Thank you. Councilor Stefano.
I also want to thank you, Hines. I think it's a great project. I hope it continues to move forward, and the kids are going to love this thing, and so are the adults in the summer, I'm sure, since it's going to be a multi-purpose pavilion. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Just echo what everybody else has said. Thank you, Hines. And boy, I hope we get it. If there's no other further discussion, I move that we adopt resolution number 12, 2015, supporting GOCO grant submission for the Alamosa City Ice Rink and multi-use facility.
Councilor Coleman.
I second.
I've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on resolution 12-2015? Seeing none. Start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Hines.
Thank you.
We'll move on to City Manager Legal, and tonight we've got 4 items. We'll start out with a discussion and direction on the plastic bag program. Heather?
Thank you, Mayor. A little bit of background on this issue. During the 2014 winter retreat, Council expressed interest on receiving public input on this topic. Following that, we sent out letters to businesses. We also did promotion through our website, social media, press release, those types of items, and held a public meeting on May 27th. And at that meeting, we had, I think, really good representation from the community. I think there was also community input for those who could not attend the meeting. They would send either prior to that, and we received some input after that. We tried to collect all of that and attach it to this agenda item to make sure that Council has before them all the different types of feedback that were presented. Following that, on July 1st, City Council again discussed the concept, and there was general direction that staff should develop a plan that included education and outreach with the end result of having a program in place. I think there was maybe some confusion on if that was the end result or not. We had a discussion of that's what some people's memory was and what was in the minutes, and then the other part of it was when this came back up again, if that needed to change, council could change it at that point in time. So we went back as staff and thought about this issue, and the recommendation we would have to you tonight is something more of to at least get the discussion going. It's something obviously you could change. You could indicate that nope, you're 100% in support of doing this, and we just need to implement it and do it in a good way. Or you could say nope, we're not in favor of this. We don't even want to spend any more effort. The item that I would recommend to you tonight probably falls more within the middle of that. And what I would probably recommend to council is that I would imagine that there's some in our community who have a passion for this and feel that this is the direction that the city should take. At the same time, at a staff level, we're juggling a lot of different projects right now and may not have the same passion. So one opportunity or one possibility is if council wanted to elicit volunteers from the community who are passionate and informed on this issue, that they could maybe create an education program, reach out to businesses, reach out to residents, and they could do their best to try to see if they could get a certain amount of support for this type of thing within the community. I think this would involve staff in regards to they would check in if they wanted to use any of our city resources such as the website or social media. They would have that available to them, but we would obviously making sure that the messaging fits into what our standard messaging requirements are. So we would make resources that are the city's available to them, but a lot of the work, the research, and that would kind of fall on this passionate group of volunteers. I would recommend if this is something you're interested in, that maybe setting clear expectations up front would be a good idea. If council is in support of bringing this program to fruition, maybe you would want to see 30% support if we were to do a survey, or 40% or 50%. It's a discussion topic, but if it's something where this group could help people better understand it and be more open to it, and we were to do a survey and 30% of those respondents, or 40%, whatever that number is, begin to become in support of it, maybe then that's when council wants to pick it back up to then start an actual implementation and work through what that process would look like, where the money would go. Obviously, we have some communities in Colorado that have established a program, and that could be examples of what our program could look like. But I think the bigger part that's needed for the community is probably more at the core of the philosophical issue. I think you could design the program to look like anything, but at the core, when I listen to some of the feedback, is do we need it or not, and is it the right step or not? Not necessarily what the program itself would look like. And so that's why I guess I would recommend a first step there. But obviously this is kind of a starting place in the middle, and depending on how council feels and where they'd want to see that, you could make it more aggressive or less aggressive. And I don't know how you want the public input to fit in, or if you want council discussion first, but that's essentially all I planned on covering from a staff perspective.
Council, would you like audience, before we have discussion here, please, anyone who is interested in this topic, please step forward and share your thoughts with us, please. Identify yourself at the mic and for the record, please.
My name is Eric Burt. I own Christie Mountain Sports. And you want me to repeat everything I said earlier? Okay. Anyway, I apologize, for breaking protocol as far as the 3-minute, but this thing, I thought that this thing was completely on the back burner. I had no idea that this thing still was alive and kicking, and I found out about it yesterday and was like going, okay, here we go again. So I called, the idea I came up with over and above what we've already talked about at the last work session, I thought I'm going to call 3 retailers up in Breckenridge. Because that was the model that was presented in the paperwork that was originally sent to the city, was that was one of the models to look at. And I said, hey guys, what are you running into? Since you've been in the middle of this thing, what does this thing look like? And it was really interesting, some of the input that I got. Stephanie at Breck Sports, one of the managers, she says immediately, it sucks. Tourists are not happy. It's not popular. Tourists are not walking around carrying a backpack. They're not planning ahead. Some are dumbfounded. Locals are ready for the tax, but not the tourists. People are on vacation. Bags are the last thing on their mind. Originally, they purchased thicker. Let me slow down here. So what was the business's response? Originally, they purchased thicker bags to get around the fee. Now they just decided to back up, and they said now they are basically selling the bags by scanning a barcode. Basically, here's the item you want to purchase, here's the bag, I'm going to scan the bag, it's added onto your ticket. That's how they're having to deal with it. They're having to stock it just like any other item and inventory it just like any other item. Jeff at Mountain Ridge Outfitters said in many cases they waive the 10-cent fee. He said it's not worth arguing over. They're just going to eat the cost. Customers now carry everything out in their arms. I thought that was an amazing, it was something I never even thought about. Since they are not willing to pay for a bag. Since they are not willing to pay for a bag, they are only purchasing what they can carry in their arms unless they are willing to make multiple trips to the car. I thought that was really interesting as far as law of unintended consequences here. Other comments, he said, nobody thinks ahead. Nobody comes in with a bag. Most don't take the bags. So, I mean, the end result was, yeah, bag usage went down, but they kind of created a whole new, set of circumstances. By the time they get to their shop, most people are past being upset after being at the grocery store. I thought that was an interesting observation, too. The grocery stores and some of the bigger places where they hand out tons of bags, that's the initial point of impact, where the person walks in the door and says, whoa, what do you mean, I got to pay for bags now? So by the time they get to these smaller retailers, they're going, okay, well, they're already pre-programmed that this is going to be happening if they didn't already see it coming. He said basically the grocery stores are taking the brunt as far as the displeasure. He said as far as the bag program is concerned, nobody's counting the bags, it's just volunteerism. Realistically, all retailers have the freedom to do what they wish based on how it's being implemented. It is a tax. We just don't mention it as a tax to keep people from being upset. Okay? Some retailers are adding the fee even if a bag isn't taken because of software and checkout speed limitations. They just add it on, whether the person's taking a bag or not. The last one I'm going to share with you real quick, Jennifer and Pete at Mountain Goat said, it has created an uncomfortable situation with customers. A lot would refuse the bag. We really appreciate your business, but now we have to charge you for a bag. That's why it's so uncomfortable. For a privately owned business, our best advertising are our bags. That happens to be their business on that particular Main Street. Digging into the ordinance, a retailer is supposed to keep half for education. Yeah, right. When will we have time to do that on top of everything else we have to accomplish? While drafting the ordinance, this is an interesting thing, jewelry stores caused a backlash which resulted in bags of 12 inches or less being exempt. I thought that was interesting. So, picking winners and losers here. City only looking for glaring inconsistencies as far as enforcing the bag program. It's not. They don't have a bag policeman that's come around and checking things out. Comments that Jennifer and Pete added, we are hugely supportive of the environment. We recycle everything we can. Researched and found out that thinner bags had a higher biodegradable content than the thicker bags that they were originally giving out. Before the ordinance, they used paper bags, this particular place did. Then they switched to plastic because all paper bags were subject to the tax. So they made a change. Now they're using thicker bags, which are exempt, and which resulted in increased costs, increased materials, and increased fuel to transport the bags. So they used to be able to work with a 1.75 mil or a 0.75 mil, and now they have to do a 2.25 mil to get outside of the thing. So it doesn't make any sense. One thing that I thought was interesting is that the lodging companies started to put bags in rooms to help out guests. That was one of the responses that the lodging companies did. Because obviously it's a tourist town. Is Alamos a tourist town? Not to the level that Breckenridge is, but there's some parallelisms there, for sure. The one thing I asked him about, too, I said, one of the things that was proposed in the letter that we got from the city was that there would be an exemption based on income, socioeconomic, public assistance or whatnot. I asked them, I said, how would that work? And they said, I have absolutely no idea how that would work. To them, that sounded like madness. So, anyway, that's why I need a little more than 3 minutes. I apologize if I broke protocol, but so.
Thank you, Mr. Burt. Council, we have any questions or comments for Mr. Burt? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for sharing the business perspective. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else out there that wants to visit? Mr. McCann.
Dan McCann, 1809 Sunset, Alamosa, Colorado. What you want to do here is encourage people to drop off their plastic bags in containers around the community. To ask small business here to increase business costs is a negative factor. By the way, this is the San Luis Valley with some of the lowest income counties in the state of Colorado. This is not Breckenridge. Yes, tourists come here, but locals are here. And if you're in business, you don't want anything else to contribute to people not purchasing here. My roots are small business, free enterprise. And I've told you about my life, what I went through. I mean, we moved a company from California to New Jersey just to pay off a loan, okay? And because we did it, we kept our credit. Being in business for yourself isn't the government. There's certain things government has to do, just like utilities. They have to survive. You got to have gas. You got to have electricity. Things are different, and and I understand. Bags are a pain in the tail, okay? But go into business, be in business for yourself, and that's why when you have bad economic times, a lot of people say, I want a job with the government, okay? Because the government has to be there. If in business for yourself, if you don't profit, you don't eat.
Thank you, Mr. McCann. Anyone else want to visit with us? Mr. Mize.
David Mize, 1920 Edison. Another thing I wanted to point out on this issue is that the green movement, the recycling, it's reduce, reuse, and recycle. Those are the three big key words in that movement, all of which are good. These plastic bags that we're talking about, trying to get rid of, basically, are probably the most reused item in the world. I know I use them for trash bags instead of going out and buying heavier, slower to decompose trash bags. Because I can reuse that bag from the grocery store, throw it in the trash, it's going to decompose much quicker than a big, giant, hefty bag. Thus, saving helping the environment in another way. That's just something else to point out.
Thank you, Mr. Mize. Is there anyone else in the audience wanting to share their thoughts on the plastic bag program? And I'll bring it back to council for discussion or direction. Councilor Griego.
You called my name before I even pushed my button here.
I know where you're going, Charlie.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the discussion on this plastic bag program. We're always trying to find ways how to protect our environment. But I agree also that this isn't the right time for something like this to be put into place because of what's going through the community right now with this 1 cent tax for a new jail and stuff, and it's a tax, just as this gentleman said, and it's hard to push a tax on people that right now we're paying so much stuff on taxes and stuff like that. So I agree. You know, it is a good program, and I'm glad that it was brought up and for discussion. And I agree with Heather that maybe it needs a little bit more research. Maybe you have a group out there that would come together and get a lot more information, and eventually, you know, when the time is right, and something like this eventually is going to come, just like non-smoking came to the communities, you know. So I think it's this is the wrong time to pursue something like this. So.
Thank you, Councilor Grego. Councilor Coleman?
My comments, I mean, I read all 51 pages of documents that we have online to read in regards to the consumers. I talked to at least 6 business owners, Christie Mountain Sports, Treasure Alley, the owners of these businesses, Ace Hardware, Alamosa Building Supply, Colorado Sports, and I talked to many citizens, and I would like to thank Dan and also David for your comments, and all the other citizens who sent emails in. You know, protecting the environment is important, but right now I feel that the community needs a little bit more education, and we need more community buy-in before we implement any such fee. I think I want to commend Councilman Vigil for his great efforts in bringing this to everyone's attention. But right now, after doing all of my research, deep down in my gut, it's just telling me that we should not try to force anything upon the citizens at this time. We should get more community buy-in and maybe go in line with what Heather recommended, to give more education, and then maybe do some sort of a survey to figure out what percentage of people are ready to move forward with it. I don't mean to put this on the back burner or anything, because I know Councilman Vigil put a lot of effort and research into bringing this before us. But right now, I just don't feel comfortable in my gut to try to move forward in any way that's going to impose a new fee upon anybody. Thank you.
Councilor Stefano.
I also would like to commend Mr. Vigil for bringing this up. I think it was a good idea, but I also think that our constituents need a little bit more time to think about this. Like Mr. Grego said, we're now facing that 1 cent tax for the judicial system. I think people need some time to breathe, and I think we need some time to reevaluate this. I think this is not the time or timing for this project right now, but I'd be willing to look at it in the future.
Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. I need to eat some humble pie. I was elected 2 years ago because I ran on a campaign of bringing new ideas and new vision and that type of stuff, and that's what I did. And I totally respect the business community coming out and saying no to this. I hear you. There are a few things, though, I would just like to address, and that's they follow. I understand this is not Breckenridge. It's not Santa Fe. It's not Taos. I understand that. I don't need to be reminded that again. So in the future, because I do like Heather's idea of maybe getting a committee together and revisiting this in a couple years and that type of stuff, why can't we make this our own? I from the beginning, I've always said it doesn't have to be a tax. I've said numerous times maybe we can incentivize the program. Now that might hurt business as well, but I don't want this thing to be kick the can down the road. I want everybody to know that I will bring this up again, among other things. I'm not this huge tree hugger that I think everybody thinks that I am. But again, this was an idea that I had from people in town, and you've seen all these correspondences, these emails, these phone calls. It's about 50-50. However, I understand that it's not the right time. I'm good with that. So I would also be on board with the recommendation by the city manager to maybe make a committee and look at this later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vigil. I applaud your efforts in this movement. Change is not easy when it comes to subjects like this. But I really believe that council is right in its analysis of educating the public and getting people more involved in becoming more of a volunteer force to get your plastic bags and recycle them at home. Put one bag inside the other and then take them over to either any of the retail outlets that have areas where they collect these. This is really not a big problem for our landfill, but it's more of an emotional and aesthetic problem for people that live in our communities, because you see plastic bags in the gutter, in the trees, and things like that, and it kind of gives us a feeling that we could probably do a lot more. But I totally agree with you in that this is a subject that needs to be revisited periodically, but I'm with council in the fact that we probably should just look at it at different points in time and see if we're going to be ready for it anytime real soon. So with that, I don't know if anyone has direction for staff, but my feeling is let's just let's see what happens with this in the next couple of years. If there's a large outpouring of support for this, or people out in the community really want this to happen, then they need to come and visit us, and we can revive this, or at least bring it back to the forefront. Is that what you needed, Heather?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Council, for that discussion. And so we will move on to a public hearing on ordinance number 15-2015, an ordinance approving the whole cost of the improvements made within Special Improvement District number 14-2, together with incremental costs, approving and confirming the apportionment of such costs to each lot or tract of land in said district, assessing a share of such costs against each lot or tract of land in said district, and prescribing the manner of the collection and payment of said assessments. Heather or Eric? Eric, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Council. This ordinance is the public hearing on the assessment ordinance, which will close out that very small, very simple special improvement district on Craft Drive. There are 3 properties involved with that district: 313 Craft, 2910 Clark, and 325 Walker Road. The improvements were the curb and gutter and sidewalk and have been completed. What this assessment ordinance does is approves the assessment roll, assigning the proportionate cost based on, I believe it's linear footage, of each of those lots with respect to the total. And so the ordinance really is in 2 parts. There's the ordinance which sets up the basis for charging each lot based on that proportional linear footage that they have, and then also establishes that the portion assigned to each lot can be paid off essentially immediately within a month of the ordinance, or can be carried over 5 years with annual payments at the rate of interest of 6%, and that's up to the property owner to decide whether to do that. And just to make clear, there was some question on one of our prior SIDs about whether, if you don't pay up front, can you pay off early, or are you stuck paying interest for 5 years? And the answer is you can pay anytime you want. It's just like any other loan that you might take out. So if you're tired of paying interest and you have the money to pay off whatever your outstanding principal and accumulated interest is, you can do that. The assessment roll is the secondary document presented in the materials, and it's all fairly straightforward. I know that Ferris Bervig was talking to me right before the meeting about the assessment applicable to 2910 Clark, and I think he found out what he needed to find out because he's not here anymore. But with that, all of the lot owners have received notice of this hearing, and anybody, you can open the public hearing or ask me any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Eric. And this, how old is this project? Can you remind us?
This project began and was completed actually in 2014.
Thank you. Thank you. Council, any discussion? Never mind. With that, I will open the public hearing on ordinance number 15, 2015. If there's anyone in the audience wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please approach the podium. Identify yourself. For the record, please.
Donald Kanan, 313 Craft. I represent the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Has a lot of linear feet on this project, and just want to say we appreciate what staff has done in working with us to inform us of the project and the costs, and we're prepared to do our part, and we support it.
Thank you, Mr. Kanan. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this ordinance? Yes, sir.
Hi, Tim Gallegos, 325 Walker Road. Home address says 13209 US 35 South Alamosa. I just had a couple concerns. When they started the project, they never asked me about the driveway. I had a driveway on the east side of the sign. Well, they put the driveway on the west side of the sign. And the biggest part is the Walker Road is the Farm Bureau that drives straight through. Now they have to come kind of around and go back to Farm Bureau. And then my other concern is the elevation of the lift. Is kind of really steep, and I've had a couple of people complain about hitting their cars on there. I don't know who designed it or if there anything can be done to get it fixed. I mean, I don't have a problem with the improvements. It's nice, but I just wish someone would have came to me and asked me first about the driveway. I just assumed the driveway was on the east side. I just assumed it would have stayed there. I mean, I seen them when they started the project, but nobody. I mean, and then when I came back around, it was already poured, and the driveway was on the west side of the sign. So that's my only concern, that and then the elevation of the entrance going in, and I don't know what can be done, but I just think someone should have informed me on the driveway. I mean, I wasn't really informed. They told me after it was done, so I wasn't informed like the follow person was. So, but that's my only gripe about the project. So, but it does look nice.
Thank you, Mr. Gallegos. Is there anyone else in the audience? With that, I will close the public hearing on ordinance number 15-2015. Bring it to council for discussion or a motion. Councilor Griego?
I guess I had some questions maybe of Pat on some of the concerns that Mr. Gallegos brought up, and how can we maybe not the driveway, but at least the entrance, the levels, is that something we before we sign off on that contract, they have to correct?
When we initially poured the mountable curb, we realized we did have problems. We had issues with people getting into the church parking lots and everything like that. So we removed that section of curb and re-poured the curb and the sidewalk behind the curb to allow for a more gentler transition. It hasn't been an issue on either of the other properties. And this is the first I've heard of it on Mr. Gallegos's.
And what about the driveway that was poured in a different area?
To my knowledge, the driveway was poured where the tracks in the dirt were, where they were using to access the property originally.
Okay, thank you.
So Pat, just to make sure, when we removed the pan area we did it for all the areas to make sure for that transition? Okay.
Yes.
Pat, a quick question specific to our communicating with some of the property owners. Did you have any communication at all with any of the property owners in that area to see if they had any concerns before we started work out there, completed work out there?
Yeah, we went over, to my knowledge, we went over the plans with everybody. We showed everybody what we were doing. Their signatures were obtained before we started work.
Thank you, Pat. Council, what are your wishes?
Well, it seems that everybody's pretty much happy with the work out there, with except for Mr. Gallegos. And I wish that there should have been some communication, better communication, and we're sorry about that. But with that, I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 1520, 2015.
I second it with a question for Pat. Pat, can we resolve his issue on that?
I think it'd be best if Mr. Gallegos would contact Pat tomorrow and share his specific concerns, and Pat can look at the site and have a better feel for it. Just hearing about it tonight, it's hard to talk about what we would be able to do or not do.
I've got a motion and a second on ordinance number 15, 2015. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. We'll move on to a public hearing on ordinance number 20-2015 and ordinance establishing the employee pay plan for fiscal year 2016. City Manager, Heather?
Thank you. As part of the budget process, which is an annual process, we also have the pay plan that comes before City Council. This year, we actually did quite a bit of work on our pay plan and established what is a more traditional type of pay plan instead of a listing of the different positions with the ranges of pay. And so with that, we were able to make adjustments to the salaries to at least be paying the minimum starting wage for all positions within the city, and made great efforts in that arena. Given that we just did that in August, we did not feel that there needed to be any cost of living adjustment or anything like that. So what you see before you gives direction to where I would have the authority to hire staff within those ranges, not outside of those ranges, unless I bring that back before City Council. And it's in line with the pay plan that we spent all that time on this past August. There has not been any changes.
Thank you, Heather. With that, I will open the public hearing on ordinance number 2015 and invite anyone in the audience to comment on ordinance number 2015, either for or against. Mr. McCann.
Dan McCann, 1809 Sunset, Alamosa, Colorado. I've lived here 20 years, coming this November. The city workers work real hard. You get in big towns, you talk about people leaning on the shovel. They do. They got a lot of money. The fox isn't watching the hen house. And around here, if anybody sees that, somebody's going to call up. Okay, that's just how it is. So you're getting your money's worth. And by the way, for the third time in a number of years, Social Security recipients are not getting a raise this year.
Thank you, Mr. McCann. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on ordinance 2015? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on ordinance 2015, bring it back to council for discussion or a motion. Councilor Griego.
Just a comment. I wanted to thank Heather for all the hard work that you put in making sure that we're treating our employees fair and that they're getting paid properly. You know, that study like that hadn't been done in quite a while, and now I think it's our job to stay with that and make sure that as years go by that we keep following and make sure that they are properly being paid and stuff. So, thank you.
Councilor Stefano.
With that, I move that we approve public hearing on ordinance 2015, an ordinance establishing the employee pay plan for the fiscal year 2016.
I second it.
I've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on ordinance 2015? No? Start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. We'll move on to a public hearing on ordinance 19-2015, an ordinance making the annual appropriations for fiscal year 2016. Heather?
Thank you, Mayor. While this is an annual document that's approved by council once a year, it's actually a year-long process for staff. It's something where we do monitor costs. We do look for opportunities to make improvements, reduce costs, those types of items. But probably about 4 to 5 months before we bring a document to you, the departments start working on what their recommendations are going to be as part of the budget process. They input those numbers. They try to capture if throughout the year we heard ideas about needs for new programs, if we heard about needs for efficiencies, we try to capture those during that time. That information is then brought to my level and the finance director's level, where then we have department meetings to go over line item by line item and try to create as clean of a budget as possible to bring to council. And as part of that process, we definitely want to highlight when there's significant changes, but it's also a time for council to determine if there's new programs or areas that we should make changes as well. And for this annual budget, the attached communication does provide a bit of an overview of what some of those more significant changes are through the process. And carrying forward from the direction that council gave last year, we do have those capital projects that are planned that will spin down the fund balance a little bit. We've had a lot of discussions about TABOR requirements and council's desire to stay above at least the 5%. We're easily above a 10% on the fund balance, and I think council, hearing from the community, wanted to make sure some of those funds were being used for projects that were needed, and those are mostly transportation projects, but also the MVRs for the police department, which was a very big and important public safety expenditure. So those are continuing to move forward in the budget. Obviously, if our revenue projections were to change or our expenses were to change, we can adjust those, but since we are moving forward as expected, those are still in the budget. $75,000 was included in the public administration line item to hire a consultant to do the scope of work for the levy certification. This is a very detailed technical project, and we need to get our hands around it in order to make sure we're positioned well moving forward. We finalized the centralization of all technology. We've included a new line item for a public art program that was added to non-departmental division for $20,000. We dedicated funds for the police ballistics. We heard from the police chief that they were having trouble training and really making sure the guys had the equipment they needed because of ballistics. So we will be changing the guns that we use. We dedicated funds to support the neighborhood watch programs. We changed the call-out rate for fire personnel to more closely match the rate that the county uses. We added $15,000 for a line item for property abatement activities in the police support services. This is an area that, you know, hopefully after a year we get it reimbursed either through tax rolls or other items, but we needed funds up front to do the property abatement. It also allows us to be more proactive and timely in those activities, which I think is what you were hearing from the constituents of wanting to be more timely with those. We've added a part-time and seasonal employee for Parks and Rec and Parks Maintenance. The two drivers of this is we will be more aggressive with our noxious weeds. We have an obligation there, and it will require some staff. We already had the funds we felt that were needed for equipment and the chemicals, but it's a matter of having the staffing level to also get at those weeds. The other issue is we are seeing with our special events, they're rarely between 8 and 5, and so it was requiring a lot of control over our scheduling to do after hours and provide support for those. It's something that's important to the community, but we needed to make sure we were still getting the normal daily jobs done as well. In regards to the enterprise fund, we have an ongoing push for environmental awareness. As we look at our utility rates, and we will be having a study done with that, we did include a request to have them evaluate what the cost and requirements would be if we wanted curbside recycling. That is an item that was brought up through some of these public meetings that we held, and really to know how to feel about it, it would be good to know what the cost might be. We are looking at still working on our augmentation plan for the mandated water issues. Those will require acquisitions for water rights and will place some pressure on our enterprise fund. In regards to the recreation fund, we noted that we have earmarked $500,000 if we can get the remaining $800,000 for the multi-purpose ice rink facility. So we did note that in there. And essentially, we continue to also look in regards to water treatment plant to keep our eyes on the trains for the treatment with the arsenic and trying to avoid any surprises there. So with that, those are the major changes from the previous year budget. Other than that, operations would continue as they have, and that's all I have in regards to presentation.
Thank you, Heather. And so with that, I will open the public hearing on ordinance 19-2015, an ordinance making the annual appropriations for fiscal year 2016. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this, please approach the podium. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on ordinance number 19-2015 and bring it back to council for a decision or discussion. Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank Heather and Amanda and all the staff for working on this budget, and also thank you fellow councilors for coming together and setting some goals and some direction and some things that we would like to do for our town. And I appreciate all of our hard work in coming together with that.
Councilor Diego.
Yes, this budget does really affect the two big areas that we really were pushing for, and that's public safety and public works. You know, people are always constantly wanting their streets fixed and trying to fight crime, trying to get the police department whatever it needs to fight crime, you know. So those are two big areas that this really does address, and it helps out a lot. So thank you, Heather.
Councilor Coleman.
Yes, I'm glad to see the additional funding, and once again, I would like to thank all the council also for coming together as a team and approving these additional funds. I really appreciate seeing the additional funding going to the police department, and as well as the increased rate fee for the fire department. I can't say enough about how much these officers and firefighters put their life on the line for us on a daily basis, and any time that we can do anything to show our support for them and helping them get the tools that they need to be successful, it's a win-win for not only the community but for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll echo what council has to say about the budget, and we realize there are so many needs out in our community. We're doing the best we can and trying to make sure a lot of those needs are being addressed, both in the general enterprise and recreational fund as well as other funds. And so kudos to our staff and all our department heads for getting this done in a timely manner. Thank you so much for that. Councilor Stefano.
I move that we pass ordinance 19-2015, settling the 2016 annual budget.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on ordinance number 19, 2015? Seeing none, start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Council. And so then we'll move on to committee reports. Who has a committee report? Move on to staff announcements. Heather?
Thank you, Mayor. I had the opportunity today to participate in a regional public health emergency operation drill. Our county public health officials invited me to play a minor role, but it was a good opportunity to see the depth of the professionalism we have in public health and with the county, and if there is an incident that we are in good hands with their knowledge and their ability to work regionally. And it was a very good exercise to be able to play a very small role in witness. We will be having to give you a brief update, our Water Smarts meeting. This is the committee we created to help us educate the public on the need for water conservation. If we want to explore different ideas to maybe provide carrots for people to reduce their water usage, to even look at rates if higher users should have a higher rate, those types of things. And look at landscaping, especially right-of-way, parks, those types of areas if there needs to be changes there, with also an eye towards beautification and maintenance. And so we have our second meeting coming up this Friday, so the group is doing their homework, and we'll see how that goes with our second meeting. I wanted to let council know that we had a valley-wide manager administrator lunch last Friday. I think everyone was very appreciative of the opportunity to just casually meet and talk about items that are going on and just see what's going on in the valley from other managers. So it was a very enjoyable lunch. I know several of you have been contacted by some downtown vendors, specifically Mr. Carlucci, about concerns of how much we're spending locally. We got tied up in a few things, but staff will be contacting him to find out his specific concerns so we can make sure we're addressing those specifically. In addition, they've already looked at our line items and broken down where that spending has gone. So we're going to have a much more complete picture coming for an update in regards to that, but I didn't want to give too much of an update without really having a handle on his specific concerns and address one issue if his issue was something else. So we are continuing those discussions for that. And lastly, and for me, most exciting is reading in the newspaper that the wheels are still turning for the unmanned aircraft industry coming to the valley. I think it's very important to take those safety considerations into account and make sure everyone is proceeding cautiously, but at the same time, it's hard to contain my excitement because from an economic development perspective, it's hard to bring primary jobs into the valley. And this is one where this technology isn't going to go away. I don't know what next generation's going to look like, but it's nice that we might have it here in the valley. It will bring primary jobs. It will impact the entire valley, not just one community, which I think sometimes can cause some conflict. And so it's a very positive project in regards to that. And it's something that I think will grow. Additionally, it supports our partners in education at a time where at the state level, they may not have the same levels of funding. And so being able to help our partners have an edge and have some training that will draw people to their institutions will help secure them. And at a time when we have our partners like DRG doing a study of the financial impact of the water laws, and if we have to dry up land and what that means in agricultural jobs and the economy, there's going to be an impact. We don't know exactly what that will be, but it would be nice to have another industry that's not water dependent coming in to maybe help balance what might be a reduction in another area. So I was very excited to read that in the newspaper and hope that it continues to move forward.
Thank you, Heather.
Mayor, I had one comment before you move on to, I want to thank you, Heather, for having that managers meeting. I know the chief has been having meetings with the chiefs from from other communities. And I think that's one thing that council needs to do in the future is maybe start having luncheons with these different communities and finding out how we can work together and if there's, if they need something or we need it, have that communication open. So I would think that would be our next step is, Mayor, is to, we have this meeting with Mata Vista, but why can't we have them with Antonito or San Luis or these other communities? I think by our city manager doing that kind of breaks the ice and allows us to move forward on something like that.
Thank you. Very good observation, Councilor Griego. I think it's something we should pursue. I think the time commitment for many of us comes into play, but I think it's something that we really need to pursue, as well as meetings with our county commissioners and our Board of Education and all the other entities. Yes, it's exciting to know that our commissioner partners are working hard on this as well. What a wonderful project, and hopefully we can garner some manufacturing jobs out of this. That would be great for our community and the entire valley as well. So Heather, thank you so much for working so hard on that, and all the staff members that are involved and council members that are involved in that. I think that Councilor Coleman is pretty involved in that as well, aren't you, Councilor Coleman? Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome,
Really
Mayor. Thank
appreciate that. And so with that, I'll turn the mic over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Two things, Heather. I would like to thank you on, number one, addressing the issue with the local vendor downtown to try to see what we can do to continue to shop local. I'll keep talking about that. We could stop our small towns from becoming ghost towns by supporting our local businesses, and I thank you and your staff for addressing that issue and that concern. Thank you. The other thing is I want to thank you for the proactive email that you sent back to Francis over at the airport in regards to our support in their efforts of moving forward with the unmanned aircraft. I think when we could work with different groups and organizations within our community, we shore up the opportunities for the entire San Luis Valley. Even though, according to the article, they have other areas and other sites maybe as priority sites, but showing the support that we have from our city towards that project, it really ensures, I guess, help the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you, Council, and thank you, staff. We'll move on to council comment. Any council comment? Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick kudos to Pat and his staff for the new roundabout by the high school. It is new to the city, but it's great for the city. It's safer. It gets traffic flowing, moving in a place that can get caught up, especially for games or at lunchtime for the high school. So it will take a little bit of adjustment, but it's a good thing. Thank you.
Councilor Stefano.
I just want to thank Holly for the dinner at the Rialto with the boards. That was a great meeting with all the boards. It was fantastic, and it was a really great meal, so thank you.
Councilor Coleman.
I would like to thank Pat. He took me on a tour today. It was awesome of Public Works, and I got a chance to go out and see some of the facilities that we have. I can't tell you how fortunate we are to have the staff that we have working for the city of Alamosa. These people are so passionate about their jobs and the things that they do. I talk with people who've been working there, from less than a year to people who've been working there for over 20 years, and they take so much pride in their job. And I think as all of our council should, whenever you get an opportunity, go out with them and go on the tour and see what great work our staff is doing. The other thing, Pat, thank you for the roundabout as well. I drive through there a lot, and one of the citizens brought up the question about can semis go through there and run over the roundabout, and will it support that weight? And you and I had a conversation about that today, and the roundabout is built sturdy enough to where if a semi hits it, it won't damage it right away. So that's good to hear. And also, emergency vehicles can get over it as well, so that's good to know. And then another comment, the San Luis Valley Theater Company is a theater company here in the San Luis Valley. They are going to have a theater play or dinner play on October the 30th and 31st at the Grill Golf Course. I encourage all the citizens and anyone to come out and support them. We'll be supporting not only our golf course grill, but also you'll be supporting a nonprofit organization that's trying to do great things here in the community, using local talent to bring entertainment to the San Luis Valley. Thank you.
Councilor Griego.
I wanted to thank everybody for the comments on the work session we had today on team dynamics. You know, when we have a problem, we have to come together and visit it and talk about it. You know, a small fire like that can become a big fire, and we need to stay focused. We need to move this community forward, and with meetings like that and work sessions like that, I think those are the best things before something blows up. So I want to thank everybody for their comments.
Thank you, Councilor Griego, and I want to thank council as well. I think work sessions like that are so important to keep the lines of communication open. Sometimes I personally think I know what my job is, but sometimes they redirect me into what I really can and cannot do. And so I think each and every one of us need to hear that positive reinforcement, and that's what I looked at this work session. It was positive reinforcement for me. I hope that everyone profited from it, and have nothing but respect for staff, our city manager, and each and every one of you. And so with that, I'll wait for any other council comment. If there isn't any, then I will adjourn this meeting. Meeting adjourned.